It's 2018, and we're in the bustling city of Los Angeles. The kind of place where people come to reinvent themselves, chase big dreams, and get lost in the shuffle of endless possibilities. But for Sarah, the story starts in a much quieter, more predictable setting. She's in her late 20s, living a life that looks good on paper. Steady job, a solid group of friends, and a relationship that, on the surface, seems perfect. Now, Sarah isn't the type of person to stand out in a crowd, but that's never bothered her. She's always been content with the quiet comfort of her life, working as an administrative assistant at a law firm, grabbing brunch with her best friend Marissa on the weekends, and spending nights at home with her boyfriend, Jake. Life wasn't extraordinary, but it wasn't bad either. Jake, on the other hand, well, he was exactly the kind of guy you'd expect in Sarah's world. Charming, easygoing, and in the beginning, completely captivating. He was a personal trainer at a local gym, fit and energetic, always busy with clients or hanging out with his buddies. The kind of guy who made Sarah feel special, wanted, loved. And at first, everything felt effortless. But as the months passed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't that Jake was doing anything wrong, at least not at first. He was still charming, still the guy who could make her laugh even on her worst days. But there were cracks in the foundation, small things that kept popping up, like the late-night texts and calls he always seemed to be taking, or the long hours at work he would claim but never had any real explanation for, or the fact that lately he seemed more distant, more preoccupied with his phone than with her. And it's in this uneasy moment that the story begins to unravel. Sarah doesn't know it yet, but the life she's carefully built with Jake is about to crumble in the most devastating way. It's a Friday evening, and Sarah's sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine. Jake's supposed to meet her for dinner in about 30 minutes, but she's already noticed that something feels different tonight. Maybe it's the fact that he's been working late all week, or the sudden tension that's crept into their once easy conversations. Whatever it is, Sarah can't shake the feeling that she's on the edge of something she doesn't want to face. Jake calls, and his voice sounds distracted, rushed even. He tells Sarah he'll be late again, something about a last-minute session with a client he couldn't turn down. Sarah's heard this excuse more times than she can count, but tonight, it feels different. Something in his voice, in the way he says goodbye, makes Sarah feel like maybe this time is the last straw. She hangs up, staring at the phone for a moment, letting the quiet settle around her. Something doesn't feel right, and she knows it. She's been ignoring the warning signs for weeks now, the gut feeling she's tried to push aside in favor of believing in Jake's promises, the little lies she's let slip past without a second thought. But tonight, something inside her shifts. She gets up from the couch, grabs her coat, and decides to meet her best friend, Marissa, for a drink. She needs a distraction, something to get her mind off Jake. But more than that, Sarah needs someone who knows her, someone who can offer some perspective. Marissa listens patiently, her eyes wide with concern as Sarah tells her everything. The late nights, the distracted phone calls, the general sense of distance that's been building for weeks. "You need to trust your gut, Sarah," Marissa says, taking a sip of her cocktail. "If something feels off, it usually is." Sarah nods, but a part of her doesn't want to hear it. She wants to believe that she's just being paranoid, that it's all in her head. But deep down, she knows Marissa's right. Something is wrong, and she's not sure she can keep pretending it's not. The next day, Sarah's feeling restless. She spent the entire morning mulling over what Marissa said, running through every conversation, every moment, every look she's shared with Jake. There's one thing that keeps standing out, the nagging feeling that Jake's been hiding something from her. So, she does something she never thought she'd do. She takes a deep breath, opens Jake's laptop, and logs into his email. She knows it's wrong, that this isn't the kind of relationship she wants to have. But in the back of her mind, there's a voice telling her she needs to know the truth. What she finds is worse than she expected. She scrolls through a few messages, nothing too incriminating at first, just the usual spam and work-related emails. But then she spots one. It's from a woman named Nicole, and it's dated just 2 days ago. The subject line reads, "Can't stop thinking about last night." Sarah's heart stops. She opens the email, her hands trembling. The message is short, but it's enough to send a cold wave of panic through her body. Had such a great time last night. Can't wait to see you again.
Giorgio, Nicole.
Sarah's stomach drops. The world feels like it's spinning. She's not stupid. She knows what this is. She doesn't want to believe it, but deep down, she knows. Jake's cheating on her. That night, Sarah waits. She doesn't say anything when Jake walks through the door. His usual charm and energy not quite matching the intensity of the storm brewing inside her. She waits for the right moment, watching him, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she can't hold it in anymore. She throws the laptop onto the table, her voice shaking with emotion. "Who's Nicole?" she demands. Jake looks taken aback. His eyes widen in shock, his smile faltering. But then it's gone, just as quickly as it appeared. He looks guilty. His words come slowly, like he's trying to figure out the best way to lie. "Sarah, I saw the email." "Jake," Sarah interrupts, her voice breaking. "I know what's been going on." Jake's face falls, and for the first time, Sarah sees the truth in his eyes. He doesn't try to deny it. He doesn't even try to apologize. Instead, he just stands there, awkwardly shifting on his feet, unsure of what to say. "Sarah, it's not what you think," Jake starts, but the words sound hollow. "Then what is it, Jake?" Sarah shoots back, her anger rising. "Because I'm done with excuses. I'm done pretending everything's fine. I've laid the groundwork, introducing Sarah, Jake, and the first seeds of betrayal. Sarah is beginning to recognize the cracks in her relationship, and the tension is mounting. From here, we can dive into the deeper complications of this revelation. Sarah's emotional journey, the confrontation with Jake, and the fallout that follows. The silence after Sarah's confrontation with Jake is suffocating. He stands there, visibly uncomfortable, shuffling his feet, but there's no apology, no remorse in his eyes. Sarah's heart aches, her chest tight with a mix of disbelief and anger. For a moment, she wishes she could just forget everything. Erase the last few months of doubt, of late nights, of whispered phone calls. But she can't. It's too late for that now. Jake opens his mouth to speak again, but Sarah cuts him off. "I don't want to hear it, Jake. I've had enough of the lies. I've been standing here, waiting for you to love me the way I deserve. But you've been too busy with someone else." Jake looks down at the floor, his hands fumbling in his pockets. "Sarah, I never meant for this to happen." He starts, his voice low and shaky. "I swear, it's not what you think." But Sarah can hear the defensiveness creeping in. She's heard this story before. Every cheater's favorite line. "It's not what you think." "Well, let me tell you what I think, Jake," Sarah says, her voice trembling with frustration. "I think you've been stringing me along, keeping me around while you play games with other women. And I'm done. I'm done pretending like this isn't happening." Jake steps toward her, his hands raised in surrender, but it's too late. Sarah takes a step back, her chest tight, her emotions raw. "No, don't touch me." For a moment, they just stare at each other, two people who once knew everything about each other, now standing on opposite sides of a chasm they can't seem to bridge. Jake's face softens, but it's too little, too late. "Where's Nicole, Jake?" Sarah asks, her voice small but sharp. "Tell me the truth. Is she the one you've been seeing?" Jake swallows hard, clearly trying to keep his composure. "Yes," he admits finally. "It started a few months ago, but I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." Sarah feels a wave of nausea wash over her. She's hearing it from his lips, the thing she's feared the most, but somehow it's still not real. She looks away, taking a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Get out," she says quietly, her voice breaking. After Jake leaves, Sarah sits in the silence of their apartment, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She's not sure how long she's been sitting there. An hour, maybe more. The world outside her little bubble feels distant, like she's watching everything unfold through a foggy window. She spent so much time building her life around Jake. They talked about the future, about moving in together, about maybe getting married one day. Sarah had believed in all of it, believed in him. But now, everything feels like a lie. Her phone buzzes. It's a message from Marissa. "You okay?" Sarah stares at the screen for a long moment, her finger hovering over the reply button. She types, deletes, and then types again. Finally, she sends, "Jake's been cheating on me. He's with someone else." She doesn't expect a reply right away, but it comes almost instantly. "I'm so sorry. Want me to come over?" Sarah doesn't even have to think about it. She needs her best friend, her rock. "Yes, please." The next few days are a blur. Sarah goes through the motions of life, work, errands, a few text messages back and forth with Marissa, but it all feels numb. She's still reeling from the betrayal, the heartbreak. Jake's face keeps flashing in her mind, his words echoing over and over. But the worst part? She can't shake the feeling of how stupid she feels. How did she not see it? How could she have been so blind? Marissa stays with Sarah for the next few nights, offering both comfort and distraction. They stay up late, talking about everything and nothing at all. Sometimes they laugh about old times. Other times they're just silent, letting the weight of the world fall around them. It's during one of those quiet moments that Sarah realizes something. Something she's been avoiding thinking about for a while. She can't keep letting Jake's betrayal define her. She can't keep living in this space where everything revolves around his lies. It's time to move forward. By the end of the week, Sarah has packed up all of Jake's things. She's taken back everything she's lent him over the years. The DVDs, the old t-shirts, the stuffed animals she'd bought him for Christmas. She doesn't need any reminders of him. The only thing she wants is to feel like herself again. She heads to a local coffee shop, looking for a change of scenery. As she walks in, the smell of freshly brewed coffee fills the air, and for the first time in days, she breathes a little easier. It's not much, but it feels like a small victory. Sitting at the counter with a latte, she picks up her phone. She's gonna call her mom. It's been too long since they've talked, and Sarah knows she could use some comforting words right about now. The phone rings 3 times before her mom picks up. "Sarah, honey, it's been so long. How are you?" For the first time in days, Sarah smiles.
I'm okay, Mom.
Just trying to figure things out. As the weeks go by, Sarah starts to feel the weight of the aftermath less and less. She's still hurt, still angry, but there's a shift happening within her. Every morning, she wakes up and feels a little more like herself again. Every night, she sleeps a little better. Her work life becomes a comfort zone. Her coworkers are supportive, and she even gets a promotion at the firm. It's a small win, but it feels good to be recognized for her hard work, especially after everything with Jake. She's starting to feel like she's moving on, like she's finally in control of her own life again. But as Sarah begins to rebuild, something unexpected happens. She runs into Jake at the grocery store. It's awkward, to say the least. Jake doesn't look surprised, but Sarah can see the guilt written all over his face. He's still wearing his gym clothes, his hair mussed from a workout. He gives her a weak smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "I didn't expect to see you here," Jake says, running a hand through his hair. "How've you been?" Sarah feels a rush of emotions. Anger, resentment, hurt, but she's learned to control them. She takes a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "I've been good. Better. I'm moving on, Jake." His eyes flicker, but he nods. "That's good. I hope you find happiness." The words feel hollow coming from him, but Sarah doesn't care. She's not here to get closure from Jake. She's here to get her own life back on track. With a quick nod, she turns and walks away, leaving Jake behind in the aisle. And for the first time in a long time, she feels a sense of peace. If you're enjoying Sarah's story so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with friends who might relate to Sarah's journey, and don't forget to comment below to let us know what you think of the twists and turns in her life. Your support helps keep stories like this coming. So thanks for being part of this journey. The weeks after Sarah's encounter with Jake at the grocery store feel like an emotional roller coaster. On one hand, she's proud of herself for standing her ground, for not letting him break her anymore. On the other hand, there's a lingering ache. There always is, isn't there? When you love someone and they betray you, a piece of you stays broken, no matter how hard you try to patch it up. But life moves on as it always does. Sarah's gotten back into her routine, work, friends, therapy sessions. She's finally getting the hang of navigating her new life. She's not happy, not yet, but she's getting there, slowly but surely. And for the first time, she's starting to realize that maybe she's better off on her own. She doesn't need Jake. She doesn't need anyone to define her happiness. But as Sarah starts gaining back some control over her life, another storm is brewing on the horizon. It all starts when she gets a text from an unknown number one evening. The message is brief, but it sends a chill down her spine. "We need to talk. It's important. Call me." Sarah stares at the screen for a few moments, the dread creeping up her spine. Who could it be? Is it Jake? She hasn't heard from him since that awkward grocery store encounter, but maybe he wants to explain himself. Or maybe it's someone else, Nicole, perhaps? Her fingers hover over the screen as she debates what to do. Finally, she hits the dial button, her heart racing as she waits for the call to connect. The voice on the other end isn't Jake's. It's not Nicole's either. "Sarah? It's Marissa." Her best friend's voice comes through, sounding oddly tense. "I'm so sorry I didn't call sooner, but I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this." The dread in Sarah's chest deepens. "What's going on, Marissa?" she asks, her voice a little too shaky. "Look, I need you to sit down," Marissa says, her tone more serious than Sarah's ever heard it. "Jake's been arrested." For a moment, Sarah doesn't even process the words. "Arrested? What for?" "Arrested," Sarah echoes, her voice barely above a whisper. "What? Why?" Marissa sighs. "Sarah, I've been doing some digging. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to make you worry. But Jake was involved in something pretty serious. Drugs. And now he's in jail for possession and distribution." Sarah's mind spins. Drugs? Jake? She can't reconcile the image of the charming personal trainer she knew with the man Marissa is describing. "Are you serious?" Sarah asks, her voice thick with disbelief. "This doesn't make sense. He was always the guy with the bright smile, the one who made me feel safe. How could he be involved in something like this?" Marissa's voice softens.
I don't know, Sarah.
"But this is bad. I'm sorry, but I thought you should know." The weight of the conversation settles on Sarah's shoulders, suffocating her. She doesn't know what to think, what to feel. It's like the world she's tried to rebuild has been turned upside down in an instant. "I'm going to figure out what to do," Sarah says, her voice shaking. "Thanks for telling me, Marissa." As she hangs up, she feels a rush of emotions. Anger, confusion, sadness, and even guilt. She feels betrayed. Again. But this time by the very system she trusted to keep her life in order. How did she not see this? Why didn't she see the signs? Character development. Sarah's struggle. The next few days are a blur of confusion and disbelief. Sarah spends hours on the phone with lawyers, trying to figure out what's going on with Jake's arrest. The more she learns, the more her world unravels. There's no denying it now. Jake isn't just some guy who cheated on her. He's someone who's been living a double life. A life filled with lies, secrets, and now crime. But what really shakes Sarah is the realization that everything she thought she knew about Jake, the good, the bad, and everything in between, has been built on a foundation of deception. He's not just a cheater. He's someone she never truly knew at all. And that, more than anything else, hurts the most. Over the next few weeks, Sarah begins to put the pieces together. The lies from the past few months begin to add up. Why Jake was always too busy. Why his phone was constantly buzzing with messages. Why he seemed more distracted than ever. It all makes sense now, but the clarity is almost worse than the uncertainty. The betrayal cuts deeper now, knowing that she was never the only one in his life. She was just the one who didn't know the truth. And to make matters worse, she finds out that Nicole, the woman Jake had been seeing, is just the tip of the iceberg. There are others, too. Multiple women, all involved with Jake in one way or another. Each one a piece of the puzzle that Sarah had been trying to solve for months. Her feelings of anger morph into something else. Something darker. She's hurt, yes, but now she's also afraid. Afraid of what Jake has turned into. Afraid of how much of a fool she's been. But the most crushing part of it all? Sarah realizes that the future she envisioned with Jake, getting married, having kids, growing old together, is gone. And it's never coming back. One day, Sarah gets a call from Jake's lawyer. It's not unexpected, but it still hits her like a punch to the gut. "Ms. Jenkins?" the lawyer says, his voice brisk and professional. "I'm afraid things have taken a turn for the worse. Jake's facing serious charges, and we're not sure if we'll be able to get him out on bail. He'll likely be facing time behind bars. A long time." Sarah's heart races. She can barely process the words. Her Jake, is going to jail for something she never would have imagined. A part of her wants to cry, to scream, to ask why. But she doesn't. She stays silent. "I know this must be hard for you," the lawyer continues, "but I wanted to give you a heads up. He may try to reach out to you. He'll need your help, perhaps in the future, to vouch for his character." Sarah's mind goes blank. Jake wants her to vouch for him? After everything he's done? After everything he's lied about? "No," Sarah says firmly. "I won't be doing that." There's a pause on the other end of the line. "I understand. But I wanted to make sure you were prepared for what's ahead. It's going to be a difficult road for him, and, well, he may try to make amends." But Sarah's mind is made up. She won't forgive him. Not now, not ever. A few days later, Sarah gets an unexpected message from Jake. It's a text, and it's simple, but it hits her hard. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I never wanted to hurt you. Please just let me explain. I'm sorry for everything." Her fingers hover over the screen as she reads the message over and over again. She wants to believe him. She wants to believe that he's sincere, that he's sorry. But the truth is, she's been hurt too many times already. She sits back, looking at the phone in her hands, the weight of the situation pressing on her chest. Her emotions are a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and frustration. But the one thing she knows for sure is that she can't go back. She can't unsee the truth. With a heavy heart, she deletes the message. It's the last time she'll hear from him. We've reached the height of the tension, with Sarah finally facing the reality of Jake's betrayal and the consequences of his actions. She's done with him, and the emotional journey has only just begun. After weeks of keeping her distance, Sarah's finally starting to feel like she's closing the door on Jake for good. She's invested in herself, her work, her personal growth, and her newfound independence. And for the most part, she's content. But as with any story like this, the past doesn't stay buried for long. The unresolved emotions, the unanswered questions, they come crashing back into her life when she least expects it. One evening, just as Sarah is unwinding after a long day, she gets another call. It's from Marissa, but this time, her voice sounds different, distraught, urgent. "Sarah," Marissa says, her tone sharp with panic. "Jake. He's trying to reach you. He's in trouble and he's desperate." Sarah's heart skips a beat. She knows what this is about. The weight of Jake's arrest, his ongoing legal battles, the shock of his hidden life. None of it's over yet. It's all about to get worse. "What do you mean, desperate?" Sarah asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been trying to call you, Sarah." Marissa continues, "I know you don't want to talk to him, but this is serious. He's in trouble with some dangerous people, and he's asking for you." Dangerous people. Sarah's pulse quickens. She's heard enough about Jake's double life to know that things could spiral out of control at any moment. The thought of him mixed up with shady characters makes her blood run cold. "Marissa, I can't. I won't," Sarah says, her voice firm. "I'm done with him. He's not my problem anymore." But Marissa's plea continues. "You don't understand. He says if he doesn't get help, they'll come after you too." "Sarah, this isn't just about Jake anymore." Sarah feels a cold sweat on her brow. She can't escape the feeling that everything she's worked so hard to move on from is coming back to haunt her. The worst part? She knows she has to make a decision. She has to decide whether she's going to continue moving forward or whether she'll let Jake's mess pull her back in. After hanging up with Marissa, Sarah sits alone in her apartment, wrestling with herself. The confrontation with Jake months ago had left her broken, shattered, but somehow she's made it through. She's healed, or at least she's started to. But now, she feels like everything she's worked for is at risk of being undone. What's a person supposed to do when the past catches up with them? When the person they once loved becomes a threat, not just to their heart, but to their safety. Sarah stands up, pacing the room, her mind racing. She's not the same woman who first met Jake. She's stronger now, but the fear, oh the fear, still grips her. What if Marissa is right? What if Jake is in deeper than anyone could have imagined? What if helping him this one last time means the difference between life and death? She reaches for her phone again, her fingers trembling as she dials Jake's number. It rings twice before he picks up. Sarah. His voice is hoarse, ragged. I know you hate me. I know I've messed up everything, but you have to believe me. I'm not the same guy anymore. Please. Sarah takes a deep breath. It's hard to think clearly when she's hearing his voice again. The voice that once comforted her, now tainted by lies. She knows she shouldn't even be talking to him, but she listens anyway. She has to. What happened, Jake? She asks, her voice quiet but firm. What's going on? He pauses, and for a brief moment, Sarah wonders if he's going to tell her the whole truth. Everything. But instead, he says, I got involved with the wrong people, Sarah. People who don't care about anything except getting what they want. They've got a hold on me, and now they're going after you. You need to help me, or things are going to get worse for both of us. Sarah feels her stomach twist with dread. She wants to slam the phone down, tell him to go to hell, but she doesn't, because there's a part of her that still feels something. A trace of love, of old affection, of the woman she used to be when she believed in Jake. How bad is it? She asks, the words slipping out before she can stop them. Bad. Jake responds, his voice full of panic. But I swear, if you just help me get out of this, I'll make it right. I'll make everything right again. But Sarah knows better than to trust him. This is the same man who promised her the world and then shattered it with his lies. I can't, Jake, she says, swallowing back the lump in her throat. I can't keep doing this. I'm not that person anymore. I've moved on. There's a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Jake's voice cracks, almost a whisper. Please, Sarah. I love you. I never stopped. The words hit her harder than she expects, leaving a lump in her throat, a sting behind her eyes. But she fights it back, refuses to be swayed. I can't be your savior, Jake. I'm done. With that, she ends the call. The next few days are filled with anxiety and tension. Sarah can't shake the feeling that she's made a mistake. She's ignored Jake's pleas. She's turned her back on him when he needed her the most. But what if she's just condemned herself to a future of regret? She spends hours thinking, overthinking, rehashing every conversation, every twist in their relationship. Was it worth it? Did she do the right thing? The phone rings again. Sarah. Marissa's voice comes through, frantic. You won't believe this. He's been kidnapped. Sarah's heart skips a beat. Kidnapped? By whom? And why? Marissa. What do you mean? Who took him? Sarah demands, her voice shaking. It's the same people he was involved with, Marissa replies, her tone grim. They're not going to let him go, Sarah. Not without a fight. For a moment, Sarah feels the air leave her lungs. She's too scared to think, too scared to breathe. Everything in her body is screaming to ignore the phone call, to walk away. But the part of her that still loves Jake, the part that's been buried deep down, can't. She knows she has to make a choice. She grabs her keys. By the time Sarah arrives at the location Marissa had given her, her heart is pounding in her chest. The adrenaline is coursing through her veins, but she can barely keep her hands from shaking. Her mind is racing with so many questions, so many fears. What if it's too late? What if Jake's already beyond saving? The building is dimly lit, the air thick with tension. Sarah steps inside, the smell of smoke and stale air hitting her as she moves through the maze of hallways. Her phone buzzes in her pocket, but she ignores it. She doesn't have time for distractions. As she reaches the end of a dark hallway, she hears voices. Loud, harsh voices. And then, through the crack of an open door, she sees him. Jake, his hands tied to a chair, his face bruised and bloodied. And the men surrounding him? Dangerous, threatening. Sarah can feel the fear rising up inside her, but she forces herself to stay calm. Jake's eyes meet hers, and for a brief moment, there's a flicker of hope. But that quickly fades when the men notice Sarah. "Let him go," Sarah says, her voice steady but laced with fear. One of the men laughs, a cold, cruel sound. "You think you're just going to walk in here and make demands?" He sneers. "You're just as weak as he is." Sarah's hands tremble, but she doesn't back down. "I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he's safe," she says, her voice firmer now. "You'll have to go through me." The air inside the warehouse is thick with tension. Sarah's heart pounds in her chest, each beat a drum of uncertainty as she stands in the doorway, eyes locked on Jake, bound to the chair in front of a group of dangerous men. The harsh fluorescent lights above flicker, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The men are bigger than her, older, rougher. She can practically feel the weight of the threat in the room. But she's not backing down. Not now. She's come too far to let fear take hold of her. She swallows her panic, taking one slow, calculated step into the room, forcing herself to keep her composure. Her fingers brush the edge of her pocket, where she's hidden a small phone, just in case. "Let him go," Sarah says, her voice steady, though inside, she's a storm of nerves. The men don't respond immediately. Instead, they glance at each other with amusement, sizing her up. It's clear they weren't expecting anyone to come for Jake, and they definitely weren't expecting it to be Sarah. "You must be out of your mind," one of the men says, stepping forward, his voice low and mocking. He's wearing a leather jacket, his face scarred, as if he's seen 100 fights. "This is none of your business." "I don't care," Sarah snaps back, her voice gaining strength. "You're not taking him. Not after everything." Jake's eyes flicker with recognition when he sees her. For a brief second, his gaze softens, almost as if he's relieved she came. But his relief quickly fades into something darker when the man with the scars turns to look at him. "You told her too much, didn't you, Jake?" The man growls. "That's your mistake." Sarah's pulse quickens. Jake's been keeping secrets, but now, the weight of those secrets is coming down on them both. She can't let him go down alone. This isn't just about him anymore. It's about her, too. "You're not getting away with this," she says, the words firm, cold. Her body is shaking, but she doesn't let them see that. She refuses to let them see her fear. "Let him go now." As Sarah stands there, facing the danger head-on, she realizes how far she's come. Not just in this moment, but over the past few months. She's no longer the woman who let fear dictate her decisions. She's not the woman who ignored the red flags and let herself stay in a toxic relationship because it was easier than facing the truth. She's changed. But what's happening in front of her is more than just a battle of wills. It's the culmination of everything she's gone through. Every lie, every heartbreak, every betrayal. It all leads to this moment, this choice. To stay in the shadows, or to step forward, armed with everything she's learned about herself and the world. The man with the scars smirks, taking a step toward her. "You really think you can just walk in here and make demands? You don't understand what you're dealing with." Jake, still bound to the chair, looks up at Sarah, his eyes wide with fear. "Sarah, don't. Please. They won't hesitate to hurt you," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. But Sarah doesn't back down. She's been hurt by Jake once, and she refuses to let him drag her back into that world. She's stronger than that. Her eyes narrow, and her voice comes out low, almost growling. "I'm not afraid of you." The room goes deathly silent for a moment. The tension is palpable. Sarah feels every eye on her, the weight of their stare pressing in, making her feel like she's a target. But it's in this moment that something inside her snaps. She's done being scared. She's done with being a passive participant in her own life. The man with the scars steps closer, raising a hand as if to intimidate her. But before he can make a move, Sarah hears the sound of sirens in the distance.
The men pause.
For a split second, there's a flicker of hesitation in their eyes. I don't care if the cops are on their way. One of the men snarls, his hand tightening on the gun at his side. You think you can stop us? You think you can save him? But Sarah has no intention of backing down. Her phone is already in her hand, and before they can react, she presses send on a message to Marissa. Call the cops. Now, it's a calculated risk, but it's the only option left. The man with the scars smirks, his lips curling up into a malicious grin. It's too late for that, he growls. You're already too deep. All of you. But just as he takes a step forward, another figure bursts into the room. Sarah's eyes widen as a familiar face appears in the doorway. Detective Ruiz, the very officer who had been investigating Jake's criminal connections. Ruiz's gun is drawn, his eyes locked on the man with the scars. You were right about one thing, Ruiz says coolly, his voice echoing in the tense silence. It's too late, but not for Sarah. The men immediately freeze, their hands instinctively moving toward their weapons, but Ruiz is faster. He fires a shot into the air, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The room erupts into chaos. Everybody down, Ruiz shouts. I'll say it again, everybody down. For a few seconds, Sarah is in shock, trying to process what's happening. The dangerous men, once so confident in their power, are now scrambling to get to their weapons. But it's too late. Officers flood into the room, swarming the men, handcuffing them, dragging them away. Jake, still tied to the chair, looks at Sarah, his eyes wide with disbelief. You did it? He asks, voice cracking. Sarah's chest tightens, her heart racing. She wants to scream at him, to tell him how badly he's messed up, how much pain he's caused. But in this moment, the only thing she can focus on is the fact that he's still here, alive, safe, and, for now, that's all that matters. Yeah, Sarah says, her voice soft but firm. I did. Jake doesn't say anything else. Instead, he simply sits there, his hands still tied, his face a mixture of relief and guilt. He knows that, in some twisted way, Sarah's just saved his life. And for the first time, he seems to understand just how much he's taken from her. The chaos dies down quickly as the officers take the last of the dangerous men into custody. The sirens that had been growing closer now echo in the distance, a reminder that Sarah's decision to confront the situation head-on has changed everything. Jake's sitting on the floor now, his hands still bound behind his back, but his eyes are filled with something different. Regret, guilt, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny spark of gratitude. Sarah doesn't look at him. She's too focused on the officers, the chaos still unfolding around her. Detective Ruiz walks over, offering her a small nod. You did good, Sarah, Ruiz says, his voice gruff but appreciative. You saved a lot of lives today. Sarah doesn't respond at first. She's still processing everything that just happened. The fear, the adrenaline, the confusion. Her emotions are a whirlwind, and she's not sure what to feel. She turns to Jake one last time. This isn't over, she says quietly, the weight of her words hitting her harder than she expects. You're going to have to deal with the consequences of your actions, and I'm not going to be there to pick up the pieces. Jake looks at her, his face crumpling as the weight of her words sinks in. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he whispers, his voice raw with emotion. I don't deserve anything from you. Sarah takes a deep breath, steeling herself. She looks at him for a long moment, then turns away. I know, she says simply, her voice steady. But you have to fix this yourself. As the officers lead Jake away, Sarah stays behind, watching him disappear into the shadows. This time, she's not looking back. We're at the brink of the story's climax, with the final resolution starting to take shape. Sarah's made her choice, and it's one that will define her journey going forward. The danger is over, but the real work, healing, moving forward, and discovering who she is without Jake has just begun. The warehouse is now empty, save for Sarah and the officers. The silence after the chaos is almost deafening. For the first time in what feels like forever, Sarah allows herself to breathe. But even as she exhales, she can't shake the nagging feeling in her chest. The one that tells her everything she thought was behind her is still looming. The final confrontation with Jake, the culmination of everything that's happened, is still to come. The officers begin to clear the room, rounding up the remaining men who were involved with Jake. Detective Ruiz gives Sarah a look that says more than words ever could. He's grateful, but he knows that this won't be easy for her. For all that she's done, there's a heavy price to pay for standing up to danger and betrayal. "I'll make sure they're all taken care of, Sarah," Ruiz says as he walks toward her, his voice low but respectful. "You did the right thing." Sarah nods, her throat tight. "I didn't do it for any reward," she says, her voice firm but shaking. "I did it because I couldn't just sit by and watch everything fall apart. Not again." She's standing there, still in shock, still processing everything that's happened, when she hears Jake's voice from across the room. He's been escorted out of the chair, and now, with a set of handcuffs on, he stands near the officers. His face is bruised, his eyes filled with both guilt and something else. Something Sarah can't quite place. He takes a step forward, looking straight at her. "Sarah?" His voice cracks, full of remorse. I don't know how to apologize for everything I've done. But I need you to know, I never wanted it to end like this." Sarah's heart flutters against her chest. She can feel the weight of his words, the intensity behind them. But even in the face of his pain, she knows there's no turning back. Not now. Not after everything he's put her through. "You don't get to apologize to me, Jake," Sarah says, her voice cutting through the silence, sharp and controlled. "You lost that right when you lied to me, when you betrayed me, when you turned your back on everything we had." Jake's shoulders sag at her words, his face crumbling into an expression of raw regret. "I wasn't myself, Sarah. You have to believe me. I've never been more sorry in my life." Sarah doesn't move. Her gaze is fixed on him, unwavering. She feels a surge of anger, of pain, but also something unexpected, relief. Relief that it's finally over. Relief that she can finally, truly let go. "I don't care about your regrets," Sarah says, her voice steady but softening slightly. "What matters is that I've moved on. I can't keep holding on to something that isn't real anymore." Jake opens his mouth to speak, but the words die on his tongue. He looks lost, like a man whose entire world has crumbled in front of him. But Sarah doesn't look away. She's done looking back. Jake stands in front of Sarah, but he's not the man she once knew. His body language is defeated, his eyes full of sorrow. He's never seemed smaller to her than he does now, in this moment of vulnerability. The man who once dominated her thoughts, her heart, is now nothing more than a stranger. A man who's made too many mistakes to be forgiven. It's hard for Sarah to feel sympathy for him. The man she loved is gone, replaced by someone who couldn't seem to stay faithful, who couldn't stay true to the promises he made. And yet, as she stands there, facing him, she can't help but feel the tiniest pang of empathy. After everything, Jake is still in pain. But it's not her responsibility to fix him. She's learned that lesson the hard way. The tension in the room escalates, the silence between them growing longer and heavier with every passing second. The officers are moving to detain the last few men, but the moment feels like it's stretched out in time. Jake takes one last step toward Sarah, the desperation evident in his eyes. "I'll never stop trying to make this right," he says quietly. "Even if you can't forgive me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to." Sarah feels the sting of his words, but she doesn't waver. "You don't get to do that, Jake. You don't get to make this about you anymore. I've spent so much time trying to make excuses for you, trying to make sense of all the lies. But I can't do it anymore." Her words hit him like a slap, and for the first time in their entire relationship, Jake looks like he's finally understood the gravity of what he's done. The realization hits him harder than any punch ever could. "I loved you," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. Sarah's voice cracks for just a second. You did, Jake. You hurt me, and I'm done pretending I'm okay with it. As Sarah stands before Jake, everything about their past, all the pain, the betrayal, the emotional turmoil they've been through, finally clicks into place. It's not just that Jake is gone from her life. It's that she's finally free from the hold he's had on her for so long. And in this moment, she realizes that she's made the right choice. Jake may have been a part of her life for years, but he's no longer the person she needs in her life. She doesn't need his promises or his apologies. She doesn't need anything from him except for him to stay gone. I need you to leave, Jake, she says, her voice calm, composed but final. I can't do this anymore. I fought for us, for me, for what we were. But now I'm fighting for my future, and you're not in it. Jake looks like he's about to say something, but he doesn't. He just nods, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and sorrow. There's nothing left to say. Sarah turns away, her back to him, her steps steady and confident. As she walks out of the warehouse and into the cool night air, she takes a deep breath. The weight that's been on her shoulders for so long finally starts to lift. She doesn't know what comes next, but for the first time in ages, she feels like she has control over her own destiny. Tone and style, a new beginning. The next few days are filled with the quiet aftermath of everything that's happened. Sarah doesn't know what's next for her, but she knows she's made the right choice. She starts spending more time with Marissa, reconnecting with her friends and family. Slowly but surely, Sarah begins to rebuild the life she'd lost, piece by piece. And this time, it's on her terms. She doesn't need Jake, doesn't need his drama or his lies. She doesn't need anyone to define her happiness. She's taking back her life. And as for Jake, he's facing the consequences of his actions. And while he's gone, Sarah knows she's left behind the past. It's time to move on. Her phone buzzes one night. A text from Marissa. You're going to be okay, Sarah. You've already survived the hardest part. Sarah smiles as she types her reply. Thanks, Marissa. I think I'm finally ready to start living again. The storm of chaos that had been Sarah's life is finally over. The confrontation with Jake in the warehouse, the danger, the emotional turmoil. It's all behind her now. The officers have cleared the place, and Jake is now in the custody of the police, facing the consequences of his actions. Sarah can't help but feel a mix of relief and sadness. She's walked through fire, but now she's free. The final confrontation with Jake has brought everything to a head. It's not just about the lies and betrayal anymore. It's about Sarah finally taking control of her life. She's put herself first, something she hadn't done in far too long. She's faced the past, confronted her fears, and made the hardest decision of her life. And in doing so, she's set herself on a path toward healing. Jake, for all his regrets and apologies, is now a part of her past. And while part of her will always wonder what could have been, she knows that it doesn't matter anymore. The person she was when she was with him is gone, and the person she's becoming is stronger, more independent, and more aware of her own worth. As the days pass, Sarah begins to see the changes in herself. The hurt that once defined her is slowly replaced with something more powerful: self-awareness, resilience, and a deeper understanding of her own strength. She starts focusing on what truly matters: her career, her friendships, and most importantly, her own well-being. She begins to travel again, something she hadn't done in years. It's as if the world that was once so narrow, so tied to Jake and their relationship, has suddenly expanded. She reconnects with old friends, spends time doing things she loves, and even takes up new hobbies that give her a sense of purpose and excitement. Slowly but surely, she's rediscovering who she is, beyond the heartache and the past mistakes. Her work at the firm becomes more fulfilling, and she starts to receive recognition for her dedication. She even gets a promotion, something she'd been working toward but never thought would actually come. With every step forward, Sarah feels more like herself than she has in a long time. Marissa, ever the supportive friend, is right there with her every step of the way. Their friendship grows stronger as Sarah finds herself again. The late-night talks, the brunches, the laughter. They all feel more genuine now. Sarah realizes that, despite the pain she's endured, the one constant in her life has been the love and loyalty of her friends. It's a comforting realization, one that helps anchor her as she moves forward. But it's not just her career or friendships that are growing. Sarah herself. She's learning to set boundaries, to trust herself, and to never settle for less than she deserves. She's more patient with herself, less afraid of making mistakes. She's no longer chasing approval or validation from anyone but herself. And that's the most freeing thing of all. A few months after the confrontation with Jake, Sarah stands on the balcony of her new apartment. It's in a different part of town, one that feels like a fresh start. The sun is setting, casting a warm glow over the skyline, and for the first time in what feels like forever, Sarah feels at peace. She reflects on how far she's come, from the confused, heartbroken woman who didn't know how to let go of Jake, to the strong, self-assured woman standing before the city that now represents her new beginning. She smiles, realizing that this is the life she's meant to have. A life built on her own terms. Her phone buzzes, pulling her from her thoughts. It's a message from Marissa. "Dinner tonight? Let's celebrate your promotion." Sarah grins, typing her reply with a sense of excitement that's been missing for too long. "You bet. I'll pick you up in an hour." As she heads to the kitchen to grab her purse, Sarah feels a sense of closure. Not because everything is perfect, but because she's finally at peace with her past. She's no longer defined by the mistakes of her relationships or the ghosts of the people she's loved and lost. She's moving forward, and that's enough. The night of the dinner is full of laughter and joy. Marissa raises a glass in Sarah's honor, and as they toast, Sarah realizes just how much she's gained: friendship, success, and most importantly, the ability to stand on her own 2 feet. Later, as they walk through the streets of the city, Sarah reflects on how much things have changed. She no longer worries about what could have been or about holding on to the past. The future is unwritten, and for the first time, she's excited to see where it takes her. As she looks up at the city lights twinkling in the distance, Sarah can't help but smile. She's no longer afraid of what's to come. She's ready to embrace it all. And just like that, the story comes full circle. Sarah has learned the hardest lesson of all: that in order to truly heal, she needed to let go of the person who had once been her everything. She's now her own person, and that's more than enough. Sarah's journey has been one of growth, self-discovery, and the courage to move forward in the face of heartache. She's been through betrayal, pain, and uncertainty, but by choosing to let go, she's found a new sense of freedom. She's taken control of her life, rebuilt her identity, and embraced the future with open arms. Her story is one of strength and resilience, reminding us all that, no matter how dark things may seem, there's always a way forward. If you've enjoyed Sarah's story and want to see more heartfelt journeys like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, share with your friends, and comment below with your thoughts. Your support keeps this channel alive and ensures we can keep bringing you more stories like Sarah's. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. That's the conclusion of Sarah's journey. With closure in hand and a future full of possibility, Sarah is finally on the path to healing. Let me know if you're ready to move on to the next chapter or a new story altogether.